Hey, welcome to Sci-Fi Secrets. So today I wanted to talk about the Foundation TV series and compare it a little bit with the books and see where it differentiates from them or is different from them, and talk a little bit about the series and what I think about it. The Foundation universe by Isaac Asimov spans over 22,000 years and 14 novels, more if you include the short story anthologies. So I've read this entire series by the time I was 18. So to say I'm a fan is a bit of an understatement, because I've read every single book, every single short story in the entire Robot Empire Foundation universe by Isaac Asimov, whatever you want to call it. So using my somewhat expansive knowledge of the Foundation universe, I figured I'd compare the novels to the new TV series. Let me start off by saying I really enjoyed the show so far, but there are a lot of things they changed, not all for the better. Some of the changes they made were clearly just for the TV, things that they do in pretty much every TV series. Just the cliche stuff, of course. And honestly, those cliche things are what I kind of like the least, because that's what makes Isaac Asimov's books special, is that they're not cliche. They've got stories that aren't like anything else. Isaac Asimov won awards for this supposedly being the best sci-fi universe in writing. Which I may not agree with, but everybody's got their own opinions. But anyway, if it was awarded as the best sci-fi universe and they're making changes, cliche changes, then it can only go downhill. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So I expected these changes, but I really wish they hadn't done a lot of them. Because in my opinion, pretty much everything good on TV recently came from an outsider with an original idea. But, then they became part of Hollywood or part of, the film industry. And suddenly they're putting out, the Game of Thrones finale season. Or, the Troll Hunter movie, where all of a sudden it's like, okay, what happened to all the specialness that I liked at the beginning of this? But anyway, let's get back on track. So first things first, in the book, I always thought of it as Gaal, because it's Gaal, but... in the book, it was a guy who, in my head, is Gaal, and in the show, it's Gaal, who's a girl, obviously. So, does that bother me? Well, no, I'm not, I'm not one of those SJW types, but I'm also not like, oh my god, they changed it to a girl. So, as long as it doesn't affect the story too much, I really don't care. And in this case, Gaal isn't even really a main character. She is just kind of in the first couple chapters of the Foundation novel, and then you never really see him again. So, if the series holds true, we've already seen the last of Gaal, and you don't need to worry about that anymore if it really bothers you that she's a her instead of a him. And the second reason why it doesn't bother me is because... The second reason why it doesn't bother me is because if you think changing a male character to a hot chick and having her half naked on the screen the whole time is empowerment, then I guess I'm a feminist. So, anyway. So the hyper jump was like really cool looking, but that's not in the book at all. And I have no idea what these things are. I guess those are supposed to be robots that can help with the jump. But I really don't know, because in the book, this is what it says. Here, let me find it real quick. So what I think was going on is I think they were kind of going backwards in the books to, like, say during the time of the Empire. During the Empire novels, hyperjumps were pretty traumatic. But by the time of the Foundation novels, that's 12,000 years into the Galactic Era, and they've pretty much perfected hyperdrive. Or hyper jumps, I should say. So here's exactly what it says in the book. Gaal had waited for the first of those jumps with a little dread curled gently in his stomach, and it ended in nothing more than a trifling jar. A little internal kick which ceased an instant before he could be sure he had even felt it. That was all. Yeah, it says that. That was all. So that was literally all. That's all he felt at that point in the Foundation history. They've perfected the jump drive so much that you can barely feel it anymore. It's not like it was during the Empire's days, or the early Empire days. So speaking of the novels, I thought it was kind of funny that they seem to have started with Foundation, like the novel Foundation, which is the 3rd book in the series. So yeah, there was none of this that happened. No mesh over her face, no weird dreams, no cool little visualization for the hyper jump. It never really describes how the hyper jumps are, if I recall correctly. And then yeah, I have no idea what that is. I guess that's supposed to be a robot there. But anyway, I think it's funny because Gaal Dornick is in the novel titled Foundation, which isn't the 1st book in the Foundation series. It's actually the 3rd book in the Foundation series. The 1st book, it was the 1st book written because it was written early on. But in the 80s, early 80s, Isaac Asimov returned to the Foundation series and he wrote 2 prequels, Prelude to Foundation and Forward the Foundation. And then he also wrote a couple more books after the original Foundation trilogy. So for about 30 years, Foundation was only 3 books, and now it's up to 7. So he added 2 at the beginning and 3 at the end. Yeah, I'm good at math. Anyway, yeah, personally, if I was making the show, I 100% would have started with Prelude to Foundation, because Prelude to Foundation is my favorite book in the Foundation series. It's so fun traveling with Harry Seldon as he goes through all the different districts of Trantor. I mean, it's such a good intro to Trantor. It's much better than well, in my opinion anyway, it's much better than Gaal going to Trantor. Like, it's just, I don't know, there's just Gaal doesn't see anything of Trantor. Gaal goes straight to, straight to jail. But she goes in the book, she goes to her room and Harry's there waiting for her because he knows that they're going to be arrested the next day. In the show, Raish takes her to see Harry at the Institute. And yeah, she doesn't even get to the Institute before she gets arrested. And so it never really describes Trantor too much from Gale's perspective. So it's kind of weird that they started there. The other weird thing I thought was they have Raish in this, which Raish was a character that wasn't in the original Foundation novel. Raish was a child who Harry and Doors ended up coming across when they were running through Trantor, hiding from Demerzel. We'll get to Demerzel in a minute. Demerzel is in the TV show, if you didn't notice. So there's a lot of weird changes that they made. So like I said, Raish was a kid in Forward the Foundation, in Prelude to Foundation. Then in Forward to Foundation, he was brainwashed and they tried to make him kill Harry, but he never actually killed Harry. So the scene where he kills Harry, that's entirely in the TV show, because he actually, I think Harry dies of old age, if I remember correctly. Because the assassination attempt on his life fails, and then the next time you see him is in Foundation, when the whole thing with Gaal Dornick that we've seen on TV, and then instead of him getting killed at the end, he just goes off to Terminus, and then the next thing you know, it's 50 years later, and Harry has passed away. So they don't even show how he dies or say how he dies in the book at that point. I don't remember them ever mentioning anything about him dying in any traumatic way after that, but I'm trying to reread the books right now. So anyway, the other weird thing that they did is, Raish wasn't supposed to... Well, okay, so it's so confused. I'm trying to get it straight in my head. So first of all, Emperor Cleon was in Prelude to Foundation. By the time of Foundation, when the TV show takes place, he'd been assassinated and another emperor had died in between him and the current emperor. And then the people that are in power are just merchants. They're aristocrats. I mean, they have an emperor, but he's just a pawn. So yeah, I don't think Raish even went to Terminus. I don't remember him being in the Foundation novel. I think he was only in Forward the Foundation and Prelude to Foundation, so I don't know why he's there with Gaal. little bit weird when you think about those are two male characters getting it on in that one scene. But I mean, like, is it Gaal? Well, like you've seen, Gaal's a girl in the TV show. But in the book, they're two male characters who never even meet each other. They're in completely different novels. Let's get back on track here. I've got a bit of a script written, but I'm totally off it. Oh, okay, so the space elevator. Let's go over the space elevator. When I was first watching the show, I was like, I do remember a space elevator getting sabotaged by religious fanatics. I was like, but that wasn't in the Foundation novel. And I even skimmed through, like, the Foundation novel looking for any space elevator in it, and I was like, no, there was no space elevator in the Foundation novel. So then I was thinking, well, Cleon supposedly built it, right? And he's really proud of it. So I went back to Prelude to Foundation, and I was looking, and there's no space elevator. So I kept looking, and finally I found it. All right, I want to read to you guys the scene that I found where the religious fanatics sabotaged the space elevator. The massive electrical charge released when some of the Sky Tower's insulating panels were eaten away completed the destruction of the connectors that held the tower's two segments together at the geostationary level. Although buckyball fibers are lighter in weight than any material that is even half their tensile strength, a structure of more than 35,000 kilometers length weighs millions of metric tons. The Sky Tower wavered as it tore loose from the geostationary platform, disconnected from the centrifugal forces that had pulled it taut, one end suddenly free of its moorings. The other end still tethered to the ground. The lower half of the tower staggered like a prize fighter suddenly struck by a knockout blow, and began its long, slow-motion catastrophic collapse. The upper end of the tower, equally as long as the lower, was also suddenly released from the force that held it taut. It released to the inertia that made it spin around the Earth each 24 hours. It continued to spin, but now free of its anchor, it swung slowly, inexorably, unstoppably, away from Earth and into the black, silent depths of space. In the geostationary ops center, Emerson saw every damn screen go suddenly dark. His control panel went dead. He felt himself sliding out of his foot restraints and sailing in slow motion across the operations center, while the technicians who had been working on installing the new equipment were yanked to the ends of their tethers, hanging in midair, more shocked and surprised than frightened. "What the shit is going on, Waldo?" one of them hollered. He banged his shoulder painfully against the wall and slid to the floor. Soon enough, he knew. The immense structure would swing around, and we'll all be slung in the opposite direction. "Waldo, what the fuck's happening?" He heard panic creeping into their voices now. "We're dead," he knew. "There's not a thing that anybody can do, nor all thy tears wash out a word of it." "Waldo, what's going on?" They were screaming now, horror-struck, aware that something had gone terribly wrong. Emerson tried to blank out their yammering, demanding, terrified screams. "Fear death," he quoted Browning. "To feel the fog in my throat, the mist in my face. When the snow begins, and the blasty note, I am nearing the place, the post of the foe. Where he stands, the arch fear invisible form, yet the strong man must go." And the upper half of the Sky Tower spun out and away from the Earth forever. The lower half of the Sky Tower slowly tumbled like a majestic tree, suddenly turned to putty. Its base, attached to the rotating Earth, was moving more than 1,000 kilometers per hour from west to east. Its enormous length, unsupported now, collapsed westward in a long plunge to Earth. The operations center on duty at Sky City saw their screens glare with baleful red lights. Some of them rushed out into the open, unwilling to believe what their sensors were telling them unless they saw it with their own fear-widened eyes. The Sky Tower was collapsing. They could see it. It was wavering and toppling over like a reed blown by the wind. People on the streets in Quito looked up and screamed. Villagers in the mountains stared and crossed themselves. At the Quito airport, Mance Bracknell dragged Laura by the arm as he ran down the terminal central corridor, screaming, "Keep away from the windows!" He pulled Laura into the first restroom he saw, a men's room. Two men, an elderly maintenance worker in wrinkled coveralls and a businessman in a linen suit, stood side by side at urinals. They both looked shocked at the sight of a wild-eyed gringo dragging a woman into this place. They began to object, but Mance yelled at them, "Down on the floor! Get down on the floor! There's going to be an explosion! An eruption!" "Eruption?" asked the old man, hastily zipping his fly. "Eruption grande," Mance said. "Tremblor de tierra earthquake." The businessman rushed to the exit while the older man stood there, petrified with sudden fear. Mance pushed Laura onto the cold tiles and dropped down beside her, his arm wrapped protectively around her. "Mance, how can—" "There's no place to run," he hissed in her ear. "If it hits here, we're pulverized." Slowly at first, but then, with ever-increasing speed, the sky tower's lower half collapsed to the earth. Its immense bulk smashed into Ciudad del Cielo. The tethers at the base snapping like strings, the shockwave from its impact blowing down those buildings it did not hit directly. The thunder of its fall shattered the air like a blast of every volcano on Earth exploding at once. Seconds later, the falling tower smashed down on the northern suburbs of Quito like a gigantic tree crushing an anthill. The city's modern high-rise glass and steel towers built to withstand earthquakes wavered and shuddered, their safety glass facades blown out in shatters of pellets. Ordinary windows shattered into razor-sharp shards that slashed to bloody ribbons the people who crowded the streets, screaming in terror. Older buildings were torn from their foundations as if a nuclear explosion had ripped through the city. The old cathedral's thick masonry walls cracked, and its stained glass windows shattered, each and every one of them. Water pipes ruptured, gas mains broke. Fire and flood took up their deadly work where the sheer explosive impact of the collapse left off, and still the tower fell. Down the slope that led to the sea, villages and roads and farms and open fields and trees were smashed flat, pulverized, while the shockwave from the impact blew down woodlands and buildings for 100 kilometers and more in either direction, as if a giant meteor had struck out of the sky. A fishing village fell under the shadow of sudden doom, its inhabitants looking up to see the immense arm of God swinging down on them like the mighty bludgeon of the angel of death. And still the tower fell. Its length splashed into the Pacific Ocean with a roar that broke eardrums and ruptured the innards of men, beasts, birds, and fish. Across the coastal shelf it plunged and out into the abyssal depths. Whales migrating hundreds of kilometers out to sea were pulped to jelly by the shockwave that raced through the water. The tsunami it raised washed away shoreline settlements up and down the coast and rushed across the Pacific, flooding the Galapagos Islands, already half drowned by the greenhouse warming. The Pacific coast of Central America was devastated. Hawaii and Japan were struck before their warning systems could get people to move inland. Samoa and Tahiti were hit by a wall of water nearly 15 meters high that tore away villages and whole cities. People in Los Angeles and Sydney heard the mighty thunderclap and wondered if it was a sonic boom. And still, the tower fell, splashing all the way across the Pacific. Groaning as part of its globe-girdling length sank slowly into the dark abyssal depths. When it hit the spiny, tree-covered mountain backbone of Borneo, it snapped in two, one part sliding down the rugged slopes, tearing away forests and villages and plantations as it slithered snake-like across the island. The other part plunged across Sumatra and into the Indian Ocean, narrowly missing the long green finger of Malaysia, but sending a tsunami washing across the drowned ruins of Singapore. Along the breadth of equatorial Africa it fell, smashing across Kenya, plowing into the northern reaches of Lake Victoria, drowning the city of Kampala with a tidal wave, and continued westward, crushing cities and forests alike, igniting mammoth forest fires, driving vast herds of animals into panicked, screaming stampedes. Its upper end still smoking with the titanic electrical discharge that had severed it, plunging hissing into the Atlantic, sinking deep down into the jagged rift where hot magma from the Earth's core embraced the man-made structure that had mere minutes earlier stood among the stars. Across the world, the once proud sky tower lay amidst a swath of death and desolation and smoking ruin, crushing the life from people, animals, plants, crushing human ambition, human dreams, crushing hope itself. So as you might have guessed, that wasn't on Trantor. That wasn't in the Foundation series. That wasn't even in the Robot series or the Foundation universe. That wasn't written by Isaac Asimov. That was from Ben Bova's Mercury. A very good book, I might add. But yeah, that's the only place I could find a similar circumstance to what we saw in the TV series. I also noticed a couple other things that they seem to have stolen from other sci-fi, which is, I don't know how that makes me feel. I really don't, because I would rather that they just do like hey, do Mercury as a movie, you know, or do Ben Bova's Grand Tour series, which has Mercury in it as one of the books, as another series, just like you're doing Foundation. But since they're probably not going to do that, I do kind of like that they threw that in there. So I'm a little bit on the fence about them doing that kind of stuff. Kind of like it, kind of don't. So this is when we're getting into the serious spoilers part, because I could be ruining a whole lot of supposed surprises that are coming up. So if you don't want to risk that, just go ahead and probably turn off this video at this point, because I'm going to be saying a whole lot of stuff. But I guess before you go, one last thing. The whole Cleon thing, like I said, Cleon is the dawn, day, and dusk thing. That's not a thing. I have. It sounds kind of familiar. Again, I think they lifted that from another sci-fi, but that one I couldn't quite place. So if you know what it is, go ahead and tell me in the comments. But yeah, the Cleon is just one emperor who ends up getting assassinated, and then it moves on to the next emperor. He is the last of the Intuns, which is a dynasty, but it's not like the dynasty of his clones. So yeah, like I said, the whole dawn, day, and dusk thing, that's only in the TV show. That's not in the novels. Although they did get the brutality pretty much right. Okay, so now let's get to Demerzel here. This is Demerzel, if you didn't know in the TV show. They don't make it really clear. It's kind of hard to hear a name the first time they say it, because all three, dawn, day, and dusk, say it at once. They say, oh, Demerzel. So Demerzel in the novels is Daniel Olival. If you saw my other video about Caves of Steel, he's in Caves of Steel. About 20,000 years before this is happening. Now, why I'm saying that they did Daniel dirty is because Daniel in the times of Caves of Steel, 20,000 years before this, was such a perfect. Oh my God! Like you should go watch that other video I did, because I even quote the line. He's such a perfect imitation of a human that he tricks Elijah Bailey into thinking he is a human, and Elijah Bailey accuses him at one point of being a human. I read that scene in my other video. So Daniel was such a perfect robot back then that you couldn't tell him from a human, but now suddenly in this he is like this really robotic. Yeah, he's easily defined, easily seen as a robot. And maybe they're going to try and pass this off as in the novels he's allowed Cleon and the other emperors to do a lot of evil shit so that, the empire could keep the peace, as one of those for the greater good things. And that would make him malfunction a bit, but then he would replace the pieces. And the proof of that he wasn't all robotic like this, is that he, when Harry Seldon first gets to Trantor, he tricks Harry Seldon into thinking he's just this random reporter guy, Cheddar Hummin. So he's obviously still a perfect replica of humanity. He's still a perfect human, basically. He's not all robotic like this. So this is my little theory here, is I'm thinking that maybe, okay, in the novels, Daniel, there's basically no other robots in the times of Foundation, which is why it's a little weird that there's the robots on the hyperjump ship. But there are some robots. There's Daniel, and then there's a few that he's made and that he has control of. And I'm thinking that Demerzel in the TV series might be one of the ones that he's taken control of. And did you guys notice Gerald, the one who, well, of course you noticed Gerald. He's the one who comes down the space elevator with Gaal when she first arrives on Trantor. So Gerald, so a little bit of book background. When Foundation was written in the 50s, Isaac Asimov didn't have a plan to make it in the same universe as his robot stories. He did that later. He tied them in together with Prelude to Foundation, Forward the Foundation, and several other books. So at the time that Foundation was written, Gerald was just a guy. But since I read them in the chronological orders of the books, so I read the robot stories, and then the Empire stories, and then the Foundation stories, so I ended up reading Prelude to Foundation and Forward the Foundation before Foundation. So when I read Foundation, I thought that Gerald was going to be Ardenil. Which, like I said, didn't turn out being the case because it was written before Ardenil was in the Foundation series. But if you read it in that order, you can't help but think that Gerald is Ardenil. So maybe they're going to have Gerald be the actual Ardenil and Demerzel is going to be one of his puppet robots. I'm really hoping that, because otherwise, like I said, they really did a disservice to poor Daniil. I mean, he is the main character in the series, in the entire universe. He lives for 20,000 years, far longer than anybody else, obviously. He shows up in the very first robot novel, Caves of Steel, and he's still around during the times of Harry Seldon in the Foundation novels, which is the end of the those are the last novels in that series. You see him die, he explains why he's going to die at the end of one of the novels in the very end of the Foundation series, and it's just, oh man, to do this to such an important character and just make him this robotic, nanny. He's a nanny in this. I mean, I have no problem with him being a woman because he changes his face and stuff all the time as he plays different roles. You know what I mean? As he's upgrading parts, that's just part of who he is. So it doesn't seem out of the ordinary for him to be a woman. But for him to be this robotic nanny instead of he's the architect of the galaxy. He's been controlling the fate of mankind for thousands of years. And you're going to turn him into a nanny? Oh my god, I'm sorry, but that upsets me. Okay, so while we're speaking about Demerzel, let's bring it up the hanging scene. So there's the scene where Cleon has the all the servants of the two empires. So they came in and Anacreon. When he hangs their entourage right in front of Demerzel, you got to remember, this is in the same universe as iRobot. The three laws are still in effect. I mean, they're the basis of all robot. They're inherent in the structure of the positronic brain. Maybe Daniel's come up with something similar where they're not as bound to the three laws anymore, but you literally can't make a positronic brain without the three laws to some degree in it. So anyway, to see these people hung right in front of her, she should have just shut down. Her positronic brain should have fried, or at the very least that rock hit her and she glitched out a little bit from that. No, she should have been glitching out way more from seeing those people hang. So they messed up that scene, if you ask me. Okay, there's only a couple more things I want to touch on here. One of them is, since we're talking about the Anacreons, they knew those ships were coming in the novels. It wasn't a surprise. Okay, I'm not going to go into all the little tiny things that don't really matter, like the Anacreon ships that they knew were coming, or how in the book it's Harry that tells the Emperor he'll be dead within a year, and in the TV it's Gaal, or how Harry actually met the Emperor in Prelude to Foundation, and it was the Emperor's idea to use him as a propaganda tool. He didn't care if a psychohistory actually worked or not. But I do want to point out that the vault, they're making it a lot more mysterious than it was. There was no weird restriction field thing that they show in the TV series, and it's not some magic object that they don't know anything about. Harry put that vault there, and he told him it would open in 50 years, even though they made it 35 years later for some reason. So they're going off on a tangent with that thing. They're going a little bit weird. And then the last thing I want to say is, what the hell is this? No, literally, what the hell is this? They just launched Gaal off into an asteroid field, and then she's never heard from again. I hope that in the TV series they're gonna do something with this, because in the books you never see Gaal again. That's the end of it. So they just I don't understand this scene. Why did he eject her into an asteroid field? Gaal, why did you do, like, why did you get in there and let him do that to you? Like, you just saw him kill Harry. Like this scene in the show makes absolutely no sense to me. I have no idea what's going on there. Let's just launch her into an asteroid field. Well, she'll like never come back. And he's saying you can breathe the liquid. How long is she gonna be breathing the liquid out there? Like, what the hell is going on in this scene? It doesn't make any sense at all. Yeah, well, maybe we'll find out tomorrow at the when the next episode comes out, huh? So basically, the only thing that is true to the novels in the TV series is Harry Seldon's speech, psychohistory, and the vault. That's the easy way of saying it, but it's not too bad. I wish they would have stuck a little closer to the book, but it's pretty good all in all. I'm gonna keep watching it personally, and I hope you guys do too. Hope you enjoyed this. Alright, well, if you like that at all, please like, comment, and subscribe, and hopefully I will see you back here. I'm trying to build this channel, so to really help me out if you would sub to the channel. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. Alright, take care.